Salutations, Jake here, and I got a question for y'all today. Do you remember the Promised Neverland? I don't know why I'm expecting a prompt reply. This is a video. But regardless, for those that don't know, it was originally a manga series written by Kaiu Shirai that lasted from 2016 to 2020, printed in issues of Shonen Jump, and was eventually adapted into an anime that lasted from 23 episodes that lasted from 2019 to 2021. A group of orphans are staying in an orphanage called Gracefield House and are protected by their mama, Isabella. While life in the orphanage seems like a paradise with a perfect environment to learn and appreciate life, there is only one rule to obey: do not leave the orphanage. One day, two of the highest ranked orphans, Emma and Norman, managed to get past the gate and discover the dark secret surrounding not only the purpose of the orphanage, but of themselves. Admittedly, the concept is not the most original in the world, essentially being an anime take of something like Chicken Run or Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. However, it was all made up for with the storytelling, writing, and world building of the series that made it feel truly special. Also, despite what the name has you believe, it has absolutely nothing to do with Peter Pan or Michael Jackson. I want my money back. This was actually a series that I've been curious about for quite some time now, as I do remember having friends who genuinely enjoyed it, including during lockdown a few years ago. And why not? It has an interesting deep story, some dark themes and characters, and some fascinating world building that I really want to see unfold. However, as the years passed, I haven't seen people really talk about that series as much as they should. Usually when that happens, especially after seeing how acclaimed it was initially, that's not a good sign. How is it that such an acclaimed and beloved anime went from being the next big thing to a show that nobody gives a shit about anymore? The answer? The second season. I have heard absolutely nothing but hate towards the second season for trying to compress the last chapters of the manga into an 11-minute mess, to put it lightly. And that got me thinking, just how bad did The Promised Neverland suffer in terms of a finale? Surely it can't be among series like Game of Thrones and Squid Game, right? Surely it has to be better than either of those, right? Right? Well, I'm one to admit that I actually haven't read the manga. I know, I'm not much of a reader, as much as I want that to improve. But I will try to make sure everything I look up surrounding the manga is accurate. And as for the anime itself, I'm going to try going inside it with an open mind. I don't know what exactly to expect, so I'm just gonna go inside fresh. So with that in mind, let's begin with the first season of The Promised Neverland. Because where else are we gonna begin, huh? Man, this first season was quite harrowing. But in a good way, of course. All the dark reveals, the deep world building, the suspicious nature, it all cooks up into a mighty and meaty soup. One thing I noticed after watching through all of season 1 is the fact that as the series progresses, the tone quickly gets darker. At first, you think it's going to be pretty lighthearted, with all the kids in the orphanage being protected under the guidance of Mom, aka Isabella. And it even seems that way, as they are treated really well. They are being fed properly, and they are given clean clothes. But one thing that is very suspicious is the fact that all the orphans have a number printed on their necks. The lore of this series gets pretty deep, with the orphans noticing the gate that surrounds the entire orphanage, and then discuss all the suspicious stuff that has been happening, adding into the lore. Stuff like how all the orphans were pretty much sent to the orphanage since the day they were born, or how nobody received any letters or postcards from any previous orphans who left once they turned 12. And it gets even more suspicious when Emma and Norman notice what exactly happens to people like Connie, one of the youngest orphans. The orphans are pretty much taken to be murdered, to be fed to demons. And indeed, the place is not an orphanage, but rather a farm. Yeah, it gets pretty dark pretty fast, and the fact their mother is actually complicit in the whole plan makes it even more screwed up. But I want to talk more about her once we get to the characters. I will also say that the pacing in this season is actually not too shabby. It adapts the first 37 chapters of the manga into 12 episodes. While this sounds like a lot, it actually works better than you would expect, especially since every chapter is only 18 to 22 pages long. It's still easy to follow, it doesn't feel too rushed, and it gets to the point satisfyingly. Also, there is absolutely no filler here, so there is absolutely no break from the story. Each episode feels just as important as the last, dropping pieces of lore in each one, such as talking about the tests that they take, or how the reason they leave at 12, or like how Isabella is able to track all the orphans thanks to a chip they have inside them and the other demons, and learning that these chips can make one's heart stop if they truly leave the premises. Even the small things, such as the episode titles being the date of when the episodes take place, is an interesting detail that one might easily overlook. But saying that, there are a few funny moments to levitate the more horrific moments, like Ray believing the whole story of the orphanage considering it was told by Norman and not Emma, or Krona being surprisingly great at tag, or some of the faces Emma makes sometimes. While honestly I don't find it quite as funny as something like Sailor Moon, nor does it need to be, I do at least appreciate the fact they tried. Let's get to talking about the characters. Emma is such a great main character. At first she was very much carefree and optimistic about the whole orphanage, thinking it's pretty much paradise. Like, who can ask for more? But saying that, she's not an idiot either, because she is fully aware of the dangers that are being presented within her very eyes. And when I saw her crying, I felt really sad. So she went from being carefree to being careful. She's very much an athletic character, often training others, and she's very much determined to make sure that all the orphans are safe, and that all of them can escape. And even if one's a spy, she doesn't believe them to be truly evil. That's what I really like about her. She has such a realistic development, and she's even foreboding to training the other orphans, by using tag to train them, for example. And even if she isn't able to take everyone right away, she does plan to return. What an absolute legend Emma is, and she's just an awesome protagonist. Also, the English dub of this series has her voiced by Erica Mendez, which is always awesome to see. Norman is a very caring character to Emma, trying to comfort her, and he is also the smartest one out of the entire orphanage. He is the one that is the man with the plan, and I do love how he genuinely cares for Emma's safety, and he even embraces the fact that he's got like Emma to Ray. But I will say, he is kinda like a balance between Emma and Ray in terms of personality. I love how smart that he was, and I also find it fascinating to see that he acts very cool-headed and calm for the most part, despite the fact that he has to deal with so many inner demons, such as worrying about being shipped out, and it gets very distressing. Ray is pretty much a counter opposite to Emma in terms of personality. He's more of a cynical, realist type, and he has a shorter temper than the other two. And he doubts a lot, more of a realist than Emma, like how he tells her to start suspecting other people, seeing as any one of them could be a spy for Isabella. However, he is quite smart with machinery, and in terms of plans, he's more or less on par with Norman, and also like how he becomes somewhat less cynical as the series progresses, but still retains his snarky side to him. However, it all feels crazy when we learn that he's actually the one who's the spy for Isabella, and the fact he's her son, which is certainly quite the twist. But the one thing is that he's not truly evil, just kinda has a bit of an anti-hero side to him, at least at the start of the series. All three of them are actually the ones who usually get the highest scores in the tests that are given out by Isabella. And this is important since those scores actually determine who gets fed first. Man. But hey, I also found it great that, despite all their different personalities, they actually make a great trio who I desperately want them to succeed. And the rest of the orphans I also liked too, particularly Don and Gilda. It felt great when they were recruited to join Emma, Norman and Ray's plan. Though it is kinda suspicious that Emma and Norman don't tell the full story of Connie's disappearance. And unfortunately there is a minor lie revealed moment, but it's also resolved very quickly, so it's not horrible or contrived. I will say that I do like the other orphans too, though I will admit that some of them can be a little underdeveloped or forgettable sometimes. Also, Phil is such a small and good boy, protect them. Isabella I also found quite deep. At first, you see that she acts like the caring mother to all the orphans, but we see later, after what happened, she starts getting more and more suspicious. She's very much a two-faced character, at least initially. I mean, she's acting all lovey-dovey when all is good, but when it isn't, she gets kinda creepy, like how her eyes get smaller. I love it. And as the series progresses, we see more of her antagonistic side show, such as communicating with demons, which is especially harrowing, and how the orphans trusted her less and less. I mean, she's pretty much smiling even when discussing the kids' deaths or when breaking Emma's leg. That might make her sound like a bitch. But at the same time, it's not like she hates children. Unfortunately, she's just following orders given to satisfy the demons. And she does share genuine worry when kids go missing. And while she was kinda scummy, I'm gonna be honest, it subdues once we learn a bit more about her past and why she is the way she is. It makes her go from being 1 or 2-dimensional to being pretty much 3-dimensional. And she's not just some stereotypical antagonist, and it's great that she gets some development by the end. Plus, I don't think she's the true main antagonist anyway, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But there are some other adults in the series, like Sister Krona, Isabella's assistant. I love seeing how hammy she could be with her deliveries, and she essentially wanted to take Isabella's role as mom for herself by finding evidence. Naturally, Emma's skeptical about her. It feels kinda psychological, like, is she on their side or not? But man, was she interesting to not only see and learn about. And both of those characters can be terrifying in different ways. I'd even go as far as to say that she's a well-written red herring type character, because you're left wondering if she's evil or not. And man, her death can feel quite impactful as well. The series animation looks gorgeous. It has such an iconic style to it, and the use of lighting, shading, and different hues actually add to the mood of the situations. Not once did I see any stiff movements, and I noticed some very subtle movements as well. The designs of the characters are all memorable, and during close-ups, you can even see the facial details, and considering it was from an up-and-coming animation studio at the time, like Cloverworks, it is very much commendable. In flashbacks, they even make all the characters black and white, aside from the character the flashback is focused on. Now that's a really nice touch. The theme song and ending themes are also absolute bangers, and go very hard, and actually rock with a mix of jazz, as opposed to the more orchestral score of the series. Seriously, once you finish watching this video, have a listen to the theme song. You will not regret it. And the score feels beautiful too, and fits the situations perfectly. So your eyes and ears have a great time. There are even rare occasions where you don't hear any score, or even any ambiance, which certainly makes the scenes more somber, and Isabella's lullaby theme is also very much melancholic. Going back to the story, this series feels very suspenseful. There are various twists in the series that I don't think many people would see coming. As for the series' horror elements, man can they get under your skin. The demons' designs are truly horrifying, and of course, seeing the death of poor innocent Connie felt so bad. She didn't deserve it. It's great that it doesn't need to resort to any cheap tactics like any jump scares or violent stings or anything like that. And it does tend to get quite violent too. Like, it really does mess with your head, but in a good way. But it also feels great to see more rooms of the orphanage. It goes to show just how deep the world building can truly go, and learning more about characters that we have yet to see, like William Minerva, who Emma suspects might actually be on their side, or all this talk of the orphanage having a secret room that creates babies and sisters, and how all the owl plates from William Minerva feature Morse code telling them a message about the horrors of the farm. We don't know if he's dead or alive, but the fact that an outsider knows about the farm actually adds to the lore in a deep and mysterious way. And also Don and Gilda finding all the dark secrets of the orphanage. It felt like a massive revelation to the characters when you see that. It makes the world building more engaging, and the more we learn about the farm, and the more we learn about the characters we have yet to see, the more interesting it gets. And none of it feels contrived or forced, thanks to the solid pacing, and thanks to all the uncertainties the characters feel. Like, it's not as simple as leaving the farm. There are many obstacles to overcome, and many decisions the characters have to decide. It's really not as straightforward as leaving Gracefield House, and that's what I appreciate about this series. You really don't know what's going to happen to everyone. Will it even be possible to bring everyone out of the house safely? It's completely unpredictable, And when writing a mysterious story, that's the quality you have to have. I really don't want to give too much away, since the series is really suspenseful and deep. It's got lots of mystery to keep it engaging, and there's plenty of lore given away in pretty much every single episode, meaning that it never truly gets boring. We also get to see some other characters like Grandma, who seems to be another one in cahoots with the demons. And while we don't see much of her, it adds to the mystery. I also don't want to give much away on that, since it's one of those shows that you have to watch for yourself. It's absolutely amazing with its rich storytelling, deep lore, and world building. Fascinating characters that can be full of twists and turns. And holy shit, I can totally see why people truly love this season. It's scary, it's dark, it's psychological, it's emotional, it's deep, it's harrowing. It's definitely the start of what can be considered one of the greatest animes of all time. And that's even considering that the finale of this season is incredibly satisfying, tying most of the knots. And I don't really blame others for considering this a masterpiece. Looking forward to the second season, is what I would say if I didn't know how infamous the second season was. I'm honestly not looking forward to it. But I figured to be 100% fair, I'm gonna have to include it. I don't care if others won't count it, I will. Wish me luck.
Hey, you there! What the hell is this?
Good grief, this is not a season I was looking forward to. All the stories that I heard about it, such as it being rushed, cutting out details, and everything about it being even worse, unfortunately ended up being all true. But honestly, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. It's much worse. And honestly, I felt like putting the season off for much longer, but I couldn't. This was an absolute slap in the face to anyone that absolutely adored the first season, myself included. And it comes to a point that it kind of retroactively ruins the first season, and the series as a whole as a result. And that sucks, because that season was a masterpiece in storytelling. I'm not even against it having a second season. On the grounds while the escape was satisfying, there were still some loose ends that needed tying, like learning about William Minerva, Grandma, the entire purpose of the orphanage, or just how awful the outside world can be, etc. But alas, it all turned into a giant mess. But I guess I can't really say stuff like that without explaining why I felt this way, so here we go. At first, it doesn't seem like it's gonna start poorly. It feels kinda similar to that of the first season, as a matter of fact. You feel like it's gonna give a promising start. The group of orphans that escaped Gracefield House are now trying to survive out in the outside world. They're trying to find William Minerva, find others to reunite on their mission, and of course go back to get the other orphans at Gracefield House. There are some hardships they have to face, like facing against wild demons, meeting mysterious characters, and even learning about the promise about humans and demons, about how they promise not to hurt each other, and learning about the split between the humans and demons, and learning about how there are more farms out there than just Gracefield. But the more you watch, the more you realize something. Despite all these revelations, there's one thing that feels off. A lot of plot details are kind of revealed very quickly. And this is where the biggest problem of the season crops up. The main problem with Season 2 of The Promised Neverland is that it tries to cram in so much in so little time. To have a little understanding of what I mean by this, let's take a look at the chapters it adapts. The manga as a whole has 20 volumes and 181 chapters in total. As stated previously, Season 1 is 12 episodes long and covers the first 37 chapters. While this sounds like it could be messy, it actually works because the pacing was balanced, so it doesn't get boring. Meanwhile, Season 2 of the series is 11 episodes long and covers the remaining 144 chapters. Yes, you heard that right. 144 chapters in 11 episodes. That's almost 4 times as many chapters adapted from Season 1. And no, the episodes are not any longer to compensate the amount of chapters added. The runtime for each episode in Season 2 is exactly the same as Season 1, 23 minutes each. As you can imagine, this causes the pacing of the episodes to be severely affected. The pacing feels incredibly rushed, and as a result, nothing sticks with you. Even if you do learn about important plot revelations, it doesn't feel satisfying because it doesn't stay long enough to make it truly memorable, or it just happens so suddenly without any explanation or build-up, and if it's not either of those, it's just exposition dumping, like all the crap from Sonju or Norman. I mean, does it not know about show don't tell? Oh, but it gets better. Despite adapting so many goddamn chapters, it doesn't even bother to adapt all of them properly. Various plot points are completely removed, and of course the Goldie Pond arc is not adapted. And it's not like that arc was just nothing but filler. It was a fan favorite arc that introduced us to several characters, including a whole group that actually knows a lot about the other farms in the world. Various characters that were seen in the manga, like Yugo and Lucas, are never seen either. It just feels like, what's the point? In fact, it takes on a more original anime story while still also trying to adapt the manga. This would be totally fine, I suppose. I'm all for making changes to the source material to justify the existence of the adaptation. If it weren't for the fact the plot points it has go absolutely nowhere. No joke, there's this whole subplot with Isabella trying to find the escaped kids for the demons, and you think that could lead to an interesting story, but it literally never goes anywhere. It's a shame, because that could have been a potentially unique change to make seeing the anime worth it, but they don't. And when we see her after that, she becomes a grandma, and I'm like, okay, when did that happen? And they do something absolutely shitty by the end of the season, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I can't even say that the tone is as good or as suspenseful as the first season, since while that feels like a horror mystery at points, this feels more like an adventure of sorts. And this wouldn't be such a huge problem, I suppose, if it weren't for the fact that it wasn't how it was like to begin with. It feels like watching a completely different anime, and not in a good way. It doesn't feel scary in many ways, and the whole psychological part of the series is gone. As a result, it doesn't feel very special to watch. I suppose I should move on to the characters we see this season. There is a hooded man and a hooded woman we see. These are Sonju and Mujika. You think that because they are demons they would want to eat the kids, but in actuality, they were the ones that saved the kids from the demons out in the wild. Sonju is a wise man that explains a lot about the world around them, and is part of a religion called heathens that forbids to eat farm-raised humans, but still feels the need to eat humans. It kind of felt cool, I suppose. And as for Mujika, she was pretty cute admittedly, and she was very nice with Emma and the other orphans, and as an Amazing Digital Circus fan, it felt great hearing Lizzie Freeman voice her. We also finally get to learn about William Minerva, whose real name is actually James Rattray. He was originally connected with the farms, but he then realized the whole idea of children being sacrificed was horrible. As a means to help, he changed his alias to William Minerva and hid books all across the farms, which was shown in the first season. Unfortunately, the farms discovered his actions and went into hiding. We also see Norman's friends from Lambda, who tell Emma and Ray about how much Norman changed, and they also reveal to be demon killers to the point they eat demons and also want to eradicate them, much to Emma's chagrin. There is also Peter Rattray, who is James Rattray's brother, and someone who raised Norman when he was taken in, and he's also the main big bad that oversees the entire farm system. But did it feel like I skimmed through a lot of the character explanations? Well, that's because, thanks to the season's rushed pacing, it didn't really feel like I learned much about these characters, and stuff is either forgotten or just resolved way too quickly. And when that happens, unfortunately, it makes a character that can have the potential to be interesting the exact opposite. There are even some characters that appear here, and they don't give an explanation on who they are until it's too late. I know someone will say you can find out more about them in the manga, but here's the thing. I shouldn't have to read something to learn about external information, not just about the characters, but also about the arcs that this season never bothered to adapt. The anime should be able to stand out on its own, and if it fails that, then I'm gonna call it out. But what about the characters we've grown to enjoy in the first season? Emma, you know, a character that I've actually praised for her optimistic and hopeful point of view. Well, she feels angry about the fact that there are people who are eating demons for revenge, and she's become more obnoxious about wanting demons to be redeemed. I mean, her wanting to not get revenge on demons despite being their enemies can have potential. After all, Usagi Tsukino is the sort of person that would be able to redeem people. But I think the way Emma does it is very on the nose, and unfortunately it kind of ruins her character as a result. She's basically become way worse. And she even easily convinces Norman to not do the revenge plot on the demons, and he just goes back on his plan easily. Seriously. It's just as bad as Arthur convincing the villains of Far, Far Away to be good in Shrek the Third. Speaking of Norman, he's a special case, since he's actually missing throughout the first half of the season, and it turns out he was disguising himself as a demon in the demon town. The other orphans, particularly Emma, were worried about him being shipped out to another farm, but it turns out he was only shipped to a different farm called Lambda, and he has this plan about killing demons. His personality somehow got way more leader-like, and all for the worse, and he seems to have a massive hatred towards demons. The reunion didn't even have any build-up. He just shows up and Emma and Ray reunite together. Like, what? I just hate how Norman's become slightly more antagonistic. He had no hesitation to murder a little demon girl even. I thought he was supposed to be the smartest kid, and even if he stopped eventually, it still made him a worse character. Ray is probably the least bad of the trio, but he doesn't really do a whole lot this season other than follow Emma around, and very rarely does his snarky, cynical edge to him crop up. I mean, it is nice to see his realist self crop up, but it just feels weak at this point. And as for the other orphans, it kind of feels like they're just dropped after a certain point, since the season kind of forgets about them until the end. And it's funny I mentioned no build-up earlier, because the ending, oh boy! I know I haven't read the manga, but I do know more or less how it ends. But while that one was kind of bittersweet, nah. In the anime, it's all sunshine and rainbows. There are no sacrifices. And Isabella? She just outright kills Peter Rattray right after we learn his backstory. She's redeemed by the other orphans too, and she's immediately forgiven, and without any build-up or any satisfaction whatsoever. And to top the whole thing up with a bright red moldy cherry, we have the infamous ending of what's essentially a PowerPoint presentation on arcs from the manga where we never got to see. Seriously? That's how you're going to end off your series? With a series of pictures? Pictures of arcs that we could have seen if you actually put any goddamn effort into your anime? That's a massive middle finger to all the people that actually bothered to sit down and watch all 8 3/4 hours of your anime. And sure, they all make it to the human world, but it felt unearned, it felt wasted, it felt infuriating. Even The Sopranos had a more satisfying conclusion, and that one ended on a goddamn cut to black. When a cut to black is a more satisfying finale than the slideshow, you know you screwed everything up. Deep breaths. Freaking out. Breathe it out. And so you sit there asking, well, the story is a complete mess that basically made the first season feel like a waste of time. The ending felt like a piss take, and the characters are either uninteresting or turn into bland archetypes. But at least it still looks good, right?
Ha 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 ha! No!
To be a little fair, for the first few episodes, it doesn't look so bad. I'd say it looks on par with season 1. Maybe not as amazing, but still tolerable. Episode 5 onwards though? Christ on a bike, what happened? The art style feels completely different, and background details just feel lazy, and you can definitely notice the characters going off model. It feels off. I don't want to put all the blame on Cloverworks, since they tried with what they had, especially during COVID, but I'm sorry. This looks bad. It just looks incredibly flat, and sometimes it looks lifeless. So not only is the story a disjointed mess, and the characters are worse, but it looks cheaper too. Is there anything else I liked about Season 2? Well, yes actually. The score is still suspenseful and fitting, and I will say the opening and ending theme is pretty catchy in this one. While I personally prefer the opening theme to the first season, I will say this one is really fun to listen to, and the ending theme for the season is also quite melancholic but hopeful.
And that's it!
If you couldn't tell, this season blows. It is as bad as everyone says it is. The story feels incredibly rushed, arcs and characters are skipped, making the entire story even sloppier. The characters either have potential but are wasted, get glossed over, or worse. The tone is way safer, and the ending is a massive cop-out with absolutely no build-up whatsoever. If you had like 1 or 2 more seasons to flesh things out, then it could have been way better. But the fact they just decided to condense the remaining manga chapters into the whole thing makes it feel like the season is late for a meeting. Alas, it kind of ruins the first season, because logically, if you were watching a series from start to end, you would be watching every single episode. At least that's how it would be for a casual viewer. It might be different from a die-hard fan of the series, but even if you aren't one, Just stick with the manga, or alternatively, watch season 1 and then read where the manga continues. Even if the manga's ending may not be perfect, I imagine you'll get a way more satisfying conclusion than this abomination. Even the small things like the fact the episode titles are no longer the dates the episodes are set in anymore is a red flag. It really sucks. It could have had the potential to become one of the greatest animes of all time, but thanks to this season's many issues, its fate was basically sealed, and now the series as a whole became a laughingstock. And not even Phil was able to save it this time. So, after watching 2 seasons of The Promised Neverland, what exactly would I rate it? Well, this is honestly one of the hardest things that I've ever had to rate. I understand that loads of people absolutely adore this series, and that's perfectly understandable. But I actually have sat through the whole series from start to end. The first season was genuinely amazing with some psychological horror that made you second guess everything going on, with some memorable characters to boot. Meanwhile, the second season just ruined everything and rushed through the entire manga while skipping on major arcs and characters, ending it on a series of pictures. And unless we get another reboot that actually retells the story in full, we're never getting anything else from this. This series is just a weird kettle of fish. I honestly have no idea on how to even rate this series. Obviously, I can't give it 10 out of 10 like most people would, because it started perfectly but ended abysmally. Equally, I can't give it a low score like 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, because it ended abysmally but started perfectly. So I guess I have to give it a middle ground score like a 6 out of 10. I was feeling a little generous with the score too, because it really did start so greatly. But that second season, it felt like an absolute betrayal. And this is coming from someone who hasn't even read the manga. I bet if I did read it, I would probably be even more pissed off. In fact, you know what? If you want to see this, just read the manga instead. You're bound to have a better time. But if you absolutely must have a visual way to see it, just watch season 1, and then read the manga from chapter 38 onwards. At least you'll be getting a more complete story. Will I be getting the series physically? I don't even know that either, to be honest. I don't even know if I'm wanting to own the series physically, officially, bootleg, or otherwise. Maybe if I ever spot the series for cheap, I may go for it. But honestly, I'm not really in the mood to rewatch this series anytime soon. One thing I can at least say that's positive is at least it's short. But with that second season, is it really worth watching again? I don't know. So yeah, this is Jake signing out, saying goodbye, peace out, and now if you excuse me, I have a series of books to read. Just so I can actually understand what the hell that second season was about.